On this week's MetPy Monday, we're going to talk about logging and how you can add it to the codes that you write. This means that you can issue warnings, information statements, debugs, and errors, even critical messages, without having to have a lot of print statements in your code. Welcome to another MetPy Monday. Hello, I'm John Lehman, a software engineer for Unidata. On this week's MetPy Monday, I want to show you how to use the logging module, which is a built-in to Python, and it is really handy for adding some information output to your code where you don't have to have a lot of print statements. So this has a few advantages over using print statements. First of all, it keeps your code a lot cleaner. Maybe you don't need all of those print statements all the time cluttering up your terminal output. And it also can prevent you from having to remember to capture that terminal output. So we can put these logs in a log file that you can go and grab and have all the information you need. Also, if someone else is using your code, you can just instruct them to go grab the log file, and everything you need will already be stored there. So this is really great for debugging issues in what I call more production-like software, though you can, of course, use it for just your own code. If someone else is going to use your program, it's probably to your benefit to have messages at all levels. So let's quickly make our first log message. I'm going to import logging. Now I'm going to call logging dot, in this case I want to create a warning that has some useful message like wind direction is larger than 2 pi radians. Then I'm going to go ahead and line wrap and continue my message to say something like results may be incorrect, check input units. So it's a useful message. It's a warning that says my program has not failed, but there may be an issue, something I want to alert my user to. So if I run that, you see we get this red box in the notebook that says it is a warning message. It's issued from root, which if we do an advanced logging video, we might talk a little bit about that and how to modify these logging prompts. And then there's our message. You see I didn't have a space here, so we need to go in and add a space. There we go. And so this looks more like what we would expect. There are 5 different levels of messages that you can write. The first one is a debug message. This is the least important to the user. This is a very detailed message that's meant for developers generally. So the user doesn't ever see these generally. They just get written to a file if they get written at all. A lot of times we turn off the debug messages unless we know that we're having an issue. Info, these are the next level up. These are messages that are just purely for information when everything is going as expected. So you can think of these as sort of FYIs. Something like, I found new data on disk and I'm commencing processing, or processing of this data file has finished. These are great because if you add timestamps, which is a slightly more advanced topic, then we can see how long different processes took and are we increasing in time because we have a memory leak or something like that. A warning is the next level, and this is probably the most common one and the one that most of you are likely to use. It's what we just did. It says that something has happened or is going to happen soon in my program that might be producing something we want our user to be aware of, but the program is going to continue running. So things are running as expected, but in this case, a wind direction larger than 2 pi radians might mean that you have incorrect input units. Maybe you put in 270 thinking it was degrees instead of in radians, so this warns the user of that. The next level up is an error. An error message means that the software could not perform a task due to some issue. It has not crashed, but it could not perform a task. And so to do any of these, we just change this word. So we could change a warning to an error. Now we have an error. The last level of logging message, the highest level, is a critical message. And a critical message means this is a serious issue and the software may not be able to keep running. We might be going down. So criticals are the most severe, debugs are the least severe. But in this case, we're just logging things out to our terminal, or in this case, in the Jupyter Notebook. That's not a lot more useful than print statements. We want to log to a file. So to do that, we're going to have to go over and write a little script, because the notebooks do some logging of their own to log any issues with the notebook, and they're going to just shove our messages in there and not let us create a separate log file unless we do some special tricks. And it's also generally not how you're going to be using log files from a notebook. You're going to be using a log file in a script that's either a long-running process or a croned process or something like that. So let's go ahead and create a new script. To do this, I'm going to just stay in the Jupyter environment and say a new text file. I'm going to edit it to be myapp.py. And then we'll go ahead and write our little script. So I'm going to import logging. And then we're going to create a basic configuration for this logger. And again, there's a lot more advanced things that you can do. We might talk about some of those in the future. But for now, logging.basic config. I'm going to give it a file name of myapp.log and a logging level. So I'm going to say logging.info. Notice it's all capital here. Now we're going to create some log messages. So our app is doing something, and we're going to write some log messages. Logging.debug, application started at, and then I'm just going to make up a memory address here. We would fill this in with something more relevant to our application, but the idea is this is only information that I, a developer, are going to care about. Logging.info, opening model output data file. So this is everything's running as normally. It's just telling me something's happening. Logging.warning is the next level up. It's going to be something like wind speeds greater than Mach 1 found. Results may be incorrect. So obviously we have a units issue or reading the wrong column of data, something like that. Now let's make an error message. Cannot calculate vorticity parameters. And then now something more like a critical message. Physics kernel failed. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and let's run it and see what happens in myapp.log. Okay, so I'm at an Anaconda prompt or my terminal, and I'm going to run python myapp.py. So it runs. We don't see any output on the screen, but now if we go back and look in our file explorer, we have myapp.log that was written a few seconds ago. If we look in the log, we see the info, warning, error, and critical messages. Notice we don't see the debug message. That's because in here, we have the logging level at info. If we change the logging level to debug and run it again, we see that we have the debug message and then the rest of the messages. Notice that it didn't clobber the previous output, so this file could get very large, and that could be an issue if this is a long-running process on a server. So there are some more advanced tools that let us manage things like, do we rotate log files every time the application starts? Do we have a size limit? Do we set the debug level from the command line instead of having to go into the code and change things? These are all more advanced options. But generally, you can put lots of debug statements in for free, because once you go to a production setting, you're going to up that logging level to at least info, maybe even to warning. So that will reduce the amount of information that goes into the log. And then if you have problems, you can turn those debug statements on again. Much, much better than print statements. So I hope that you found this useful and that you'll start using basic logging in your applications to help you track down your problems quicker with fewer print statements and provide more informative output to yourself and users in a log file. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on next week's MetPy Monday.